All right, Happy New Year, everybody. Let's take a look at the 2024 performance. Looking at this chart here, you see that the NASDAQ composite, basically the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 were the top performer for the 2024. But you see, everybody have a double-digit gain except the Dow Jones Transportation. It actually ended the year with pretty much unchanged, minus 0.02%. Then the Nasdaq Composite finished the year with almost 29%, and the Nasdaq 100. That's where all the mega cap tech stock, the FANG stock or the Magnificent Seven, are concentrated in, and that finished the year with almost a 25% gain. And the S&P 500 also have a high percentage of the weighting due to those Magnificent Seven stock, and that finished the year with a little bit over 23%. Now, the New York Stock Exchange Composite finished with 13%, and also the Dow Jones Industrial closed 13% as well. So that's not too shabby for a broad market index such as the New York Stock Exchange Composite. And the Russell 2000, not too bad. The small cap, finished with a 10% gain. So overall, I think the market did quite well, except for the transportation. And also, we're looking at the monthly candle. For the month of December, we did close with a negative. And so far for the week, the S&P 500 is not doing that well. Now, if we take a look at this trend line here, let me try to put up a trend line here and try to connect to these low here. You can see that we actually saw a little bit of a penetration below this trend line. And if I take out this trend line and we short using this pivot low here and then connect these points, you can see that it is touching this trend line. So are we going to see a bounce in the coming days, or are we going to see a breakdown from this trend line? Well, later on, we're going to take a look at some of the price action and see what we could expect. But definitely right now, the S&P 500 look like it's in a retreating mode here. So I would not be surprised to see a little bit more downside and pull below this trend line and possibly get below this 5,800 level to spook some of the weak hand out. And in addition to that, we all heard about this deferred tax selling, right? A lot of people that have a lot of gain from 2024 do not want to sell in 2024 for tax purposes. So when January comes, which is starting the first day of trading in 2025 tomorrow, we could see some tax selling. People will be taking profit, and then they have a whole year of tax planning on how they gonna maneuver that capital gain tax. So that's one thing that we could look, to keep an eye out for the coming week, is to see how much of that selling, coming in the first week of January, because there is also they're saying that, first week goes on January, that's how the market will likely end for the year. So if we see a negative first week, and in addition to that, if we also see a negative January, the month of January, we could likely see a negative end of the year, overall the year, a negative 2025. So bear that in mind. Seasonality thing is, it doesn't always happen. It's just that the probability is in favor of that happening, right? So there's always that caveat. Hey, past performance is not indicative of a future performance, okay? And here we're looking at the Dow Jones Industrial. You can see also Dow Jones Industrial seems to be coming down and making a little bit of a lower high here. So we'll be watching this low here. And if I do a little bit of a trend line here for those that are interested in looking at trend lines, see, so it is, touching this trend line and try to find support. And if it break this trend line, we could see this thing come down to this area here, possibly, get down to this area near the 4,200, between 42,000 and 41,500. And likewise for the New York Stock Exchange Composite here, again, we're putting a trend line up here with these pivot low. We could see it is testing this trend line here So once again, this look very similar to the Dow Jones Industrial. We'll be watching this trend line to see what it break below this trend line and move down. And we could possibly see it come down to this area here, maybe 18,200, 18,180 area. And here, looking at the Nasdaq 100, you see the Nasdaq 100, if we draw a trend line here, that seems to be a little bit steep, and it broke this trend line and came back. So take a look at this pivot here, and you can see that earlier this week before the new year, we saw this breakdown from this trend line here. Now we could also use this if you like, and again, this trend line is basically just sort of a reference point only, because that I look at the volume profile and extract level from the market generated information, the MTI, and I publish a daily trade plan with those daily levels to keep an eye on. And if you're interested in it, then go visit my newsletter at Substack. The link is in the description below, and it is smtraderCA.substack.com. So for the Nasdaq, we're basically keeping an eye on this trend line here, or this pivot level, because we could see it come down to this area here. Let me use this pivot, and we could possibly see it get down to this 20,600 area. So keep an eye on this level here. If it breaks below this trend line, continue to move down, and that will put in a lower low. So we could see a little bit of a trend change and possibly move on down to a lower level, and could get below this 20,000 level.